Qazi ordered Haridas Thakur to be beaten in 22 marketplaces. Usually people die in the 5th or 6th marketplace, but Haridas Thakur chanted and the Lord protected him. The soldiers asked Haridas Thakur to die because if he didn't, the Qazi would kill them. So Haridas Thakur said okay and went into deep trance. So the soldiers showed the body to the Qazi, and the Qazi made sure by kicking him. Haridas Thakur didn't move. So the Qazi told the soldiers to throw his body into the Ganges. Later, Haridas Thakur got up and went to the Qazi and warned the Qazi to not harm any more Vaishnavas. Then he went to visit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he saw that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took all the beating monks.
Haribol.
And this is for Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ understood part of the suffering comes from the fact that we live in a fallen world. For Jesus Christ, the path to glory was the path of suffering. Jesus Christ had firm faith in God, and he believed his sufferings is due to God's will.
He believed what?
His suffering was due to God's will.
Okay. Did you find that on the Bible or something? Or?
No, I searched it.
You searched it. Okay. Good. Very good. Okay. Samart.
Assignment. Explain how the devotees Jesus Christ, Haridas Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada and demons Stalin, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana got out of suffering. Explain what is unholy contact. Devotees, Jesus Christ. When Jesus was crucified, the Jews would take all of his clothes off and put him on what is called the cross. In the cross, they put your hands and legs touching the planks, and they would put nails in his hands and legs.
The Jews didn't do that. The Romans did it. But the Jews were the one that complained about Jesus and wanted to see him punished. Okay, go ahead.
When the Romans offered Jesus some wine vinegar as a painkiller, then Jesus refused it, although he was thirsty like any human has ever thirsted. Jesus had the most horrendous death any human being had ever had, but he tolerated all the suffering. That could not hold him, because he was a sinless man. He was free of all sins. Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was a follower of Hare Krishna movement. He chanted with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in marketplaces. He was also an ex-Muslim. At that time, when they saw Haridas Thakur chanting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he was beaten up by the Muslim aggressors, and he prayed to Lord Krishna that he will forgive them. Haridas Thakur would mainly chant the holy name of Krishna 300,000 times regularly. Srila Prabhupada. In 1965, when the 70-year-old Srila Prabhupada traveled to the West to spread this Hare Krishna movement, when he was in the Jalduta ship, he had 2 heart attacks. He had survived regularly chanting on the Tulsi beads while writing letters to the Lord and writing scriptures and poems and eating Krishna Prasad. At this age, no one would be able to do something like that. Demons. Stalin. Stalin was a leader of the Soviet Union and had different types of illnesses because of his constant working. Stalin was sick of these illnesses, typhus and angina.
Angina.
Additionally, Stalin also had his blind intestine cut out in surgery.
Had his what? Spleen?
Blind intestine.
It's intestines. Intestines. His blind intestines? Or
Blind, yeah.
blind?
Yeah.
That's the wrong word. His intestines. intestines? Is that it?
No, intestine.
intestine?
Yeah.
Yeah. His intestines is here. But it's not blind. Is it blind? No, it's not. It's just intestines. Go ahead.
Stalin had big fears and small fears. When he had a big fear later, when he solves that problem, he will gain his confidence and deal with the smaller problem that he had. Hiranyakashipu was performing tapasya for him to be immortal. When he performs, then many creepy animals, bugs, and plants will approach him. For him to tolerate this, he was to focus on what he wanted. Ravana was also performing tapasya to beat all his enemies, and he had the same situation as Hiranyakashipu had. Explain what is unholy contact. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.7, it says the sentence, and due to this unholy contact, the pure spiritual entity suffers material miseries under the mode of material nature.
I think it's 1.7.5, isn't it?
Yeah, I said that. You said 7.
You said 1.7.7?
Said 1.7.5.
But you read 1.7.
Oh, okay. In this sentence, the phrase unholy contact is given. This means that when the soul comes in contact with the non-spiritual body, due to the modes of material nature, it starts to suffer.
This means that what? Read that sentence again.
Okay.
This
means that when the soul comes in contact with the non-spiritual body, due to the modes of material nature, it starts to suffer.
Yes, okay. Good. Very good, thank you. So let's see, there was one other thing. Oh no, okay, go ahead.
Explain how demons tolerate suffering compared to devotees. Reference verse Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter 7th verse. Explain unholy contact. As long as we are in the material world, suffering will be there. Just because we become a devotee doesn't mean that we don't suffer. This is because as long as we are in the material nature, we are still forced to act by the three modes, and we are subject to our senses. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter 7th verse.
Okay, go ahead.
The living entity in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So although suffering is there, we can tolerate suffering. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.14. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception. O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. As it will be explained through certain examples, devotees tolerate suffering by thinking about Krishna, and demons tolerate suffering by thinking about something else other than the situation they are facing. Examples of devotees tolerating suffering. Jesus, known as Messiah, the Son of God. Messiah, the Son of God, Jesus Christ was one of the greatest devotees of the Lord. Because of his growing followers, local leaders fear Jesus. With the help of a man whose name was Judas Iscariot, the Romans arrested Jesus and put him on trial for claiming to be the king of all Jews. The trial went successfully for the Romans, and they decided to crucify Jesus. As part of crucifixion, Jesus' hands and feet were pinned to a cross where he was left to die hanging. One could possibly not imagine the amount of pain that Christ was going through, but he still asked God to forgive the Romans, saying, "Forgive them, for they do not know what they do." His last words were, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. It is finished." Example 2. Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya. He would often go for preaching and Harinam in various marketplaces. At the time, the Muslims did not like such behavior and used to beat Haridas Thakur. They used to beat him so hard that he would have died, but astonishingly, even though Haridas Thakur was getting beaten, he never felt pain. He survived 22 such marketplace beatings. Haridas Thakur could not understand why he wasn't feeling any pain, so he went to Lord Chaitanya. Upon his question, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu turned his back and Haridas Thakur saw slashes all over Mahaprabhu's back. Example 3. Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON, went through much suffering, but he was able to tolerate it. At the age of 70, Srila Prabhupada crossed the Atlantic Ocean. He was placed on a cargo ship that was not even meant for passengers and suffered tremendous seasickness and 2 heart attacks. At that age, possibly no one would have been able to cross the ocean and survive. However, with full belief in Krishna, Prabhupada crossed the ocean and successfully established ISKCON all over the world. As such, there were many more instances in which Prabhupada suffered, but was able to tolerate to fulfill his spiritual master's instructions.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be seen that whenever devotees suffer, their pain is alleviated because they fully depend on Krishna. This is a way to permanently get rid of any pain and transcend suffering. Devotees have the mindset that any suffering they have is only a small fraction of the karma they were supposed to get. For example, Srila Prabhupada wrote in his diary that the captain tells that they had never such calmness of the Atlantic. I said it is Lord Krishna's mercy. His wife asked me to come back again with them so that they may again have a calm Atlantic Ocean. If the Atlantic would have shown its usual face, perhaps I would have died. But Lord Krishna has taken charge of the ship. So what should have been an even disastrous commute actually turned out to be less of a problem than usual. Examples of demons tolerating suffering. Stalin. Stalin was a dictator during World War II who created the fascist movement, which led to kill around 6 billion Jews and other minorities in the war.
Okay,
That's
fascist.
That's not Stalin. It's the Italian leader. Forgot his name.
Yeah. He led the communists.
Yeah. So Stalin led the communists, and that led to about 26 Russian soldiers dying in the war.
How many?
About 26 million Russian soldiers died in the war.
Did you look that up?
Yeah. So Stalin faced many health problems and had many surgeries. Due to his high position during the time, Stalin was worried that the doctors would try to kill him during the surgery. So he decided not to take anesthesia, and he bared the pain of an open surgery without a single cry. Stalin was so focused on making sure that the doctors wouldn't kill him, so he didn't feel the pain. The doctors were astonished. Example 2. Ravana and Hiranyakashipu. Ravana and Hiranyakashipu are examples of demons who went through severe penances and suffered without drinking any water, taking any food, or even breathing at some points. However, these demons were able to stand suffering because they were determined to get what they wanted to achieve. Ravana wanted power greater than the demigods, and Hiranyakashipu wanted to make sure that nobody could kill him. Because they were so determined, they were able to tolerate the suffering. The problem with the demons is that they are extremely focused on their goals in order to make sure that they do not suffer. However, because of their passion, they are constantly suffering. Stalin, Ravana, and Hiranyakashipu were constantly suffering because they were always fearing whether someone would kill them. So they were only temporarily alleviating the pain. But when someone surrenders unto Krishna, they have full belief that Krishna will take care of them. Hence, although they suffer at times, they can easily tolerate and move on. That is the power of taking the shelter of Krishna. And then I explain unholy contact. In the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto 7, Chapter 5th verse, Srila Prabhupada writes the sentence that says, "And due to this unholy contact, the pure spiritual entity suffers material miseries under the modes of material nature." Prabhupada is basically explaining how, due to contact with the material nature, the living entity suffers under the modes of material nature. So the phrase unholy contact explains the material nature. The material nature isn't spiritual, hence it isn't holy. When the soul comes in contact with the material nature, it is not a spiritual thing, but an unholy thing. This is why we suffer.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Anybody else? Ria. Give her the microphone.
Haridas Thakur was beaten in 22 marketplaces, but he could still tolerate it because he always fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and therefore he did not feel the pain. Jesus Christ and Prahlad Maharaj also had to tolerate suffering. Jesus Christ was crucified and Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father, and Prabhupada suffered heart attacks, but because they suffered to spread the Lord's name, they all had the ability to tolerate the suffering. According to the English dictionary, unholy means sinful or wicked. Unholy contact means the association with the external energy.
Good. Thank you. Okie dokie. So, yes, okay. Where's the microphone? It's not on. It's not on. The microphone's not on.
So explain how Haridas Thakur, Jesus Christ, and Srila Prabhupada tolerated suffering. So Haridas Thakur was punished by the Muslim government for being a devotee of Krishna and preaching about Krishna. So although Haridas Thakur was
Sankirtan.
Although he was born a Muslim, he converted and became a pure devotee of Krishna. Once the Muslim government wanted to punish him, so they took him around the town and beat him in every market. But Haridas Thakur kept chanting the Mahamantra. He was able to tolerate the pain. And when he wanted to figure out why, he went to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and asked him, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed him that he took the pain of the whips. And Srila Prabhupada also tolerated suffering because when he took initiation from his guru told him to go to the West and spread Krishna consciousness there. Srila Prabhupada had to take care of his family though, so when he finally was 70 years old, he got a chance to become a sannyasi. So he took sannyas and came to the West. He came to the US on a cargo ship. On the way, he had to suffer 2 heart attacks. He still did not give up. When he finally reached New York, he had no money and he knew no one. He was all alone, far away from India. He did not even know where to start or if the Americans would even be interested in what he had to say. But Srila Prabhupada had faith that Krishna and his guru were with him and would guide him. He founded ISKCON, and over time it grew to spread all over the world. Srila Prabhupada was so merciful that he tolerated a lot of suffering just to help the fallen souls. Jesus Christ also tolerated pain. When he started, many people started to follow him, so then the Romans were worried, and so they decided to punish him. He let himself be crucified and decided to take the suffering, and he wanted God to forgive the people for what they were doing. So devotees were able to tolerate suffering because they depended on Krishna. They accepted the suffering as a part of their karma and only see that Krishna was merciful. They think that Krishna is so merciful that he gave them less suffering than what they deserved.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we begin to suffer when we think that we come from matter and not from Krishna. And then the modes of material nature act on us. The devotee understands, I'm not this body. But I'm the eternal servant of Krishna, and acts like that, then they can tolerate suffering. And they know that whatever suffering they're receiving is just a token, T-O-K-E-N, just a little bit. They actually should be suffering a lot more for their past sinful activities. This is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 14, verse number 8. Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 14, verse number 8. Let me look that up. Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 14, verse number 8. And it says, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. This is a very important verse. It should be a guiding light for devotees. 10th canto, chapter 14, verse number 8. 10:14:8. You got that, Arush? 10:14:8. Ria, do you have that? 10:14:8. Samart, do you have 10:14:8? 10:14:8. You have that? Yeah. Okay. And the purport, Prabhupada writes, Srila Sridhara Swami explains in his commentary that just as a legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he'll be promoted to the kingdom of God. So, Prabhupada starts with an example from the material world. That is, just as the legitimate son of let's say, a rich man, all he has to do is just stay alive because his father is going to die before him, right? And if he just stays alive and doesn't do any nonsense, then his father's going to leave all his money to him. Right? Is that right? Yeah. So, if we stay alive in Krishna consciousness by following the regulative principles, what are the regulative principles? No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit activities outside of marriage, always chant Hare Krishna, accept only prasadam, and regularly hear and discuss the Vedic scriptures, especially Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and come to the temple regularly to associate with devotees and do service. If we just stay alive by doing those things, right, and avoid meat eating, gambling, and so forth, then we have a rightful claim. What is a rightful claim? R-I-G-H-T-F-U-L, rightful claim, C-L-A-I-M-E. That is, because we've remained faithful to Krishna throughout our life, then Krishna will feel that this devotee is so sincere, they've tolerated so much suffering in order to preach Krishna consciousness, and so forth. Therefore, I'm going to bless them. Right? So that your claim is to receive the mercy of Krishna. What is the mercy of Krishna? He'll free you from the entanglement in the material world, and you go back to Godhead. So, Srila Sridhar Swami, he was a great Vaishnava acharya in the Rudra Sampradaya, which is one of the four bona fide sampradayas, Krishna consciousness, in South India. So he explains in his commentary that just as a legitimate son has simply to remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God, to Vaikuntha or Goloka. The word samikshamana indicates, this is a word in the verse 10:14:8, that a devotee earnestly waits the mercy of the Supreme Lord even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. So, this earnestly awaits, E-A-R-N-E-S-T-L-Y. Earnestly means with complete faith and sincere, let's say, motives or purposes. When you're an earnest person, that means you're a sincere person, you're honest, and you have no evil thoughts in your mind, and you're just dedicated to serving the Lord. So earnest, so it says, earnestly awaits. So you wait, you're patient, without any personal material desires, and with sincerity and honesty, you just wait for the mercy of the Supreme Lord, even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. However, because in his mind a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. What does that mean? Samart, you have any idea what that means? Let me read that again. Listen carefully. You ready? A devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord, even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. However, because in his mind a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. What do you think that means? The mercy, the devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities.
Basically, saying the devotee waits.
Yes. He's patient.
Patient for the Lord, even while he's suffering from his past karma.
Yeah, but then it says, however, that a devotee, a devotee who fully surrenders unto Krishna is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma.
So basically, if the devotee surrenders unto Krishna, then he will be free of the suffering?
It sounds like that. But then it says, however, because in his mind, in the mind of the devotee, he may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality. Thus, the Lord removes the last vestiges, the last traces of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. This is the key. What do you think? In other words, it's saying devotee is always patient, suffering for his previous sinful activities. However, when someone becomes a sincere devotee and surrenders to Krishna, they become free of those sinful reactions. But there may still be some remnants of sinful mentality. So then the Lord will give the devotee will help the devotee get rid of those last remnants in the mind of sinful desires, sinful mentality, by giving the devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. This is very interesting, isn't it? Krishna wants you to be completely pure. Special punishments to get rid of the last pieces of sinful desire in the mind. So one can give up sinful activities, but there still might be some sinful desires in the mind. And the Lord knows that because he's Paramatma in the heart, right? So to help the devotee, he gives punishment that may look like sinful reaction, but it's not actually sinful reaction. It's to help the devotee get rid of those last vestiges. Vestiges means something left over from the past. V-E-S-T-I-G-E-S. Vestige. V-E-S-T-I-G-E-S. V-E-S-T-I-G-E-S. Vestige. This means something that's left over from the past. So, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirits. Whoa. You have to write, your homework is to explain the following terms or following words. Just like you explain unholy, Unholy, what? Unholy context. So, your homework is 1, earnestly awaits, 1. Previous sinful mentality, 2. Three, last vestiges of the enjoying spirit. Last vestiges of the enjoying spirit. The second one was previous sinful mentality. Previous sinful mentality. M-E-N-T-A-L-I-T-Y. Yes, the last phrase that you have to explain is last vestiges of the enjoying spirit. Last vestiges of the enjoying spirit. Well, there's 3 phrases you have to explain. Earnest, it is first is earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord. I forgot that. Earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord. That's 1. Earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord. 2 is yes, previous sinful mentality. And 3 is last vestiges of the enjoying spirit. Then Prabhupada says the purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord. So, rectify, R-E-C-T-I-F-Y, rectify. You have to explain what that word means, rectify. It's all part of your homework today, for tomorrow, or for Friday. Rectify what? The living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord. What does this mean? Tendency to enjoy without the Lord. Tendency, T-E-N-D-E-N-C-Y. Tendency to enjoy without the Lord. Yeah. You got a lot of explaining to do, Samart. And it says, the purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord and therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality. What does that mean? There's the next thing you have to explain. You can look it up. 10:14:8. But the next thing they have to explain is specifically designed, SPECIFICALLY, specifically designed to curtail, CURTAIL, the mentality. Specifically designed to curtail the mentality. And then Prabhupada says, although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service, until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. Now, this is the last thing you have to explain. Slight, SLIGHT, inclination. A slight, SLIGHT, inclination. To enjoy a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. Okay, now you can refer to this purport 10:14:8. All these words are in the purport, and you get the context. This is the first paragraph. This is the second paragraph of the purport. All these words appear and phrases appear in the second paragraph. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy. The devotee is waiting for the special mercy, so that is the special mercy, the specially tailored suffering that is not a karmic reaction. It's to get rid of that last vestige of the enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead. Wow, this is really high-class, profound understanding. So we'll read the last paragraph of this purport. A sincere devotee earnestly desires to go back to the Lord's abode. Therefore, he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering respects and obeisances to the Lord with his heart, words, and body. Such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardship a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God, as indicated here by the words diabak. Just as one cannot approach the sun without becoming fire, one cannot approach the supreme pure Lord Krishna without undergoing a rigid purificatory process, which may appear like suffering, but which is in fact a curative treatment administered by the personal hand of the Lord. Whoa, this is all very profound knowledge. Very, very profound knowledge. I won't give you more things from that last. Just do what I asked you. And we'll continue studying this Friday. Friday morning. Let's see. Friday morning. What am I doing Friday morning? Yeah, we don't start setting up till a little bit later in the day. So, no, we'll start early, but that's all right. We can have class Friday. This is too much of an important issue to ignore. Because this is the thing that confuses people. Why am I suffering? If God is good, why am I suffering? But wait a minute. If you become a devotee and surrender and take initiation, you are already free of your previous karma. It can come back, however, if you leave Krishna consciousness, but you're free of it. However, the desire for enjoyment is still there in the mind. So the Lord will tailor special suffering for the devotee to get rid of that last vestige of the enjoying spirit. Why? Because you can't go back to God unless you're completely pure, mentally and physically and every way. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Sri